Thank you all again for joining us today. Hopefully you're finding this interesting and useful and not too scary. As we get into design, we did this title, Designing Packages That Sell, and as marketers, that is our number one primary responsibility. Even more so in this industry because we're dealing with perishable products. I mean, it's not a manufactured good that you can sit on a shelf and if it doesn't sell this week, you can sell it next week. And if it doesn't sell then, you discount it the week after that. By that point, your products are in the landfill. So that makes the sales and marketing side of produce packaging even more critical than a lot of consumer products. But we added and more to the slide because everything you've heard so far today has to go into our design process. We need to make sure that we're providing you with designs that meet the legal requirements and can work with the manufacturing production side of things too. So we went last because we build on top of everything else, but I think as one of our slides says, it's more, actually it's the next slide, so I'll jump to that. It's more than just pretty pictures. We're going to do a little bit of tag team here, but we wanted to start, and we're open, interrupt us at any point for questions, but we even want to go a step beyond that and solicit some questions to see if we can get, what's a couple of things that you want to make sure to get from the design part of this presentation, or that weren't asked earlier and you didn't get earlier, and we can fake it on those. Anything?
No design questions? Okay, let's keep going.
With that, we'll keep going, but you keep going.
Okay, that's exactly what we were trying to avoid.
If you can do it loud enough, you can do it from there. Because Alex gets us both ways.
So design being more than pretty pictures, like Terry said, it's not just what it looks like and feels like, it's how it works. And so we're designing to make sure that the brand messaging is consistent across all the different types of products. So, you know, whether it's on a box or a DRC or a bag or a clamshell label, or a tag or a tie, we're looking to make sure that that brand consistency across all those different types of materials is going to represent well for shoppers. We're also trying to hide less desirable features on a product, so hiding the butts or the juice that collects in the bottom of the bag, or if you've got any browning on the tips of your romaine or other, you know, whatever you're trying to hide, we're trying to make sure that the packaging accomplishes that, and that could mean, you know, different sizes of product during different parts of the growing season. So sometimes the celery is taller than other times. So trying to adjust for those differences in growing season and product is something that we think about during the design process. Features and benefits, whether it's flavor profiles or nutritional claims or recipes, we're trying to figure out how those fit on a package if they're desired. Usage suggestions, instructions, and how to prepare. SKUs, PLUs, UPCs, all those things. You have multiple target audiences for your packages, not just the shopper, but the buyer at the retailer, the checkout clerk, the buyer, the consumer themselves, and then whoever's going to be opening the refrigerator at home might not be making those purchasing decisions in store, but they're still a target audience. And then, of course, the regulators who are, you know, you're hoping never to have to talk to, but you probably will at some point. All of that required information that they want to see, plus traceability, food safety. There is so much that needs to go on a package, and some of our designers just are wringing their hand because they've got a tag this big. And by the way, we want to make it bilingual too. Yeah, so good luck with that. So we deal with all of that and are definitely up for the challenge.
And not to bypass here, an important side of what we do is the technical side of getting the files prepped for production and printing by the packaging manufacturers. You know, when Thomas is talking about a 10-color press and the perforations, and then that film is folded and sealed, all of that needs to go into the production file so that it's done correctly. So I'm going to switch over to a couple of the challenges that we look at from a design standpoint. And the first one, and it really is a big one, is what Karen was just talking about, how much information we have in such a small space to put it, especially when you add the regulatory requirements on size and placement, et cetera. And there's some packaging where the goal is to have as much of the product show through as possible. Strawberry clamshells are a great example. You know, if you've got nice red, especially middle of the season, robust, fresh, firm berries, you don't want to hide them behind a bunch of labels that have all kinds of legal gobbledygook on it. But so that's some of the challenges we struggle with. Retail desires and mandates. PLAs, so material mandates. You've got a buyer who doesn't like purple. Doesn't matter that your brand is purple. The buyer doesn't like purple.
The buyer doesn't like your logo.
Doesn't matter that your logo is used everywhere else. And I mean, you all know they've got the control. They control the purse strings, and when they say, we don't like it, we don't care what you're doing elsewhere, if it's a big enough account, big box, and you want to sell to them, you bend and you make those changes. Environmental conditions going all the way from harvest through the shelf. Wet environments, cold environments, dry environments, hot environments, stuff left out in the sun and UV fading, whether it's storage of the package before your product goes into it or what have you. Again, a lot of considerations that go into it. The retail environment, which is how your package is viewed by the consumer, which frequently is not as pristine as you want to think it's going to be. Materials and substrates, and Karen's going to talk some more about the branding, but the different color standards, the different substrates, and I think if you look at the end over there, the Yusugi boxes, that's a great example. You've got a white corrugated box, so the white gives you a pretty clear canvas that is representative of the color. Right below it, you've got a craft corrugated box. Okay, so you can put some white ink on it, which makes the color look a little bit better. Napa's a wet pack product, so it's going in a waxed box. So look at the challenge of trying to maintain that brand consistency from a waxed corrugated to a white corrugated, and then carrying that through some of the other substrates and other materials. Reproduction quality, think about it. And I'll talk first about bags, but corrugated boxes are the same way. 1,200 feet a minute, that's pretty fast. Plastic film, it stretches. 10 colors of ink, and you want that to be lined up where it's supposed to be. In registrations, the term we use, and you're really only going through the press once. So let's say that I bought the club at Crazy Horse and I don't like gray walls and I want cream walls in the dining room. I come in with my cream colored paint and I paint once and it still looks gray. So I put 2 more coats of paint on and I now have cream color walls. Running through a 10 color press at 1,200 feet a minute, you get 1 shot on a clear substrate to try and get that color to reproduce. Templates versus reality. We deal a lot with die lines and templates. This is most difficult in loose film. Head wraps. You know, if you've seen a die line, it gives you a nice area that says where the product's supposed to go. Well, heads of broccoli and cauliflower are different sizes, and this film stretches. We just did one for, it was for Yusugi for a corn tray wrap, and when they put it on the trial product, we met the template, but the film stretched and the butts could see through from our original design that was to their template. So, you know, those again are some of the factors we run into. Folds, perforations, seams, seals, vents. those all can interfere with the messaging on the packaging. Now, some of that might not matter, but if it's nutritional information and you punch a hole through the percentage value of vitamin A, you've got a problem because it's no longer appearing on the package.
Well, vitamin A might be okay because the regulations have changed.
I thought that was vitamin C. I picked the wrong one. Something, anything. And then multi-use requirements, and again, pointing to that Yasugi box, the bell pepper box up top. I'll spare you from, I'll walk over to it anyway since I'm on the wireless. Bell peppers, they only designed one box. Red, green, yellow, jumbo, extra large, large, medium. Size is determined at the field. They're manually marked, but that still needs to be allowed for in the design to enable that to happen so that they don't need to print separate boxes for each size, each country of origin, et cetera. And that becomes a production issue for you to decide. Is it better to print 10 different boxes, or is it better to buy a gross of Sharpies so your field workers can mark the boxes? Real world. Designing for the real world is something we always try to take in consideration, and this is where your products end up. Karen will show, after I go through the next quick set of slides, how we look at proofs and design as it's developing, but this is where it's going to end up. It's not the clean, pretty picture that you may see on your computer screen. It's this. Nice, organized, but those damn price tags right in front of your branding message. The glare, great, refrigerated cases, the glare. The day I took that picture, to the left of that were 3 banks without the lights on. Okay, that's a little more real world, a bit jumbled up. Where does your bag fit in there? How's it going to appear? Multicolored, different things there. I think we all recognize where that might be. Bags turned upside down. Your package is not always going to be right side up. What's the right side? The right side that you designed, or the right side that the customer is going to see when they walk by the aisle and see it there? Same is true here. The structure of the bag. One bag alone may set up really nicely on a shelf. Stacked 4 high, they may not work so well anymore. Similar situation there. The Kamados are interesting because they do have branding on all sides, and in that picture you see the packages all turned upside down, and that wasn't staged. That's exactly what it looked like when we walked through the aisle.
Okay.
You're up.
All right. So our design process begins with, what are we trying to accomplish? So, the simple answer might be, well, we're trying to sell grapes or lettuce or chopped salad or whatever the product is. And while that's true, there are a lot of other things that a package tries to accomplish. Going back to that brand consistency, whether you're trying to build a brand image or offer usage suggestions, thinking about all of your different target audiences. So we do the research from the operational points of view. How is it going to be used in the field, in the plant, on the shelf? All of those things are considered through a lot of conversations with our clients, and maybe going beyond our clients if they want us to. Competitors, we take a look at what the competition is doing, avoid doing what the competition's doing, stay consistent with what the competition's doing, regardless of which strategy it is. Knowing what's going on and what might be coming down the pike is important. And then the retail requirements. So what Safeway wants might be very different from what Walmart or Target wants. And so getting that information from the sales team or the category manager and remaining on top of what's going on with that particular retailer is critical information as we move into the design process. And we like to start with a creative brief at Moxxy. We take a look at, what are you trying to accomplish? What is this project, and what will it what will it affect? Are we designing just one standalone bag, or are we designing a new SKU to go along with an existing product line? Are we helping come up with an entirely new product line? If so, how does it fit into any existing products, or what should we think about further down the line? You know, how might this impact other marketing materials, websites, in-store merchandising and displays? What do we need to consider?
And very selfishly, from an agency standpoint, one of the important facets of this part of the process is so that we don't design something that our clients fall in love with that can't be produced or can't be produced economically. So by going into it, knowing what your production is going to require and what our limitations are, we can then work within those requirements and within those parameters.
Sometimes we find that the creative brief process can be frustrating, especially for non-marketing people who've never worked with one before. Like, why are we doing this? This is just more paperwork. Can't we just get started? I want to see some designs. Go, go, go. But then we end up designing something that doesn't work. And so we believe in gentle pushback and education, and we will try to explain to clients who maybe don't have that direct experience why it's important to come up with all of those requirements on the front end, because it ends up saving time and money. Because you can do it right the first time, or you can redo it and redo it again, and then nobody's happy. So we love that creative brief. And then once the creative brief is set, we do kick off design. We usually present several concepts to give a client a couple of ranges of ideas, all of which meet the goals laid out in the creative brief. We like to present them just the front showing at first, and so you can really see what it might look like, maybe not with any product inside, but this is a typical proof that someone might see of a salad bag design. Then we'll take it to the next step of what will it look like with the product inside, and what will it look like inside the DRC, and sometimes we'll even stack those DRCs to show what an in-store display would look like. This is especially helpful if you need to show your customer what their display is going to look like in store, or show the sales team what their sales materials may look like. Is this going to meet everybody's needs?
And with that, there are some resources available. I mean, think about 1,200 feet a minute. If it takes 10 minutes to set up the press, maybe it's a half hour, how much it would take to produce a sample bag. Fortunately, there are resources available that can do very small quantities that give you a pretty good idea what it's going to look like, so that especially if you're dealing with one of those retailers and the requirements, you can send them the samples in advance. And up here, and you know, you're welcome to come take a look later, the one with the seal on the top is a physical mock-up short run, and this was an actual production run. So you can see they actually come pretty close, and in the right circumstances, it's worth going to this extra step to make sure that you get it right.
And those mock-ups can be made either food safe or non-food safe, and there is a price difference for that. But if that's important to you, if you're going to pack it and leave it with a customer who's going to eat the product inside, you might want to go for a food safe package.
Okay, I'll take this one.
Yeah, I'm like, why are we showing this?
So once you do the mock-ups, you might want to see what the package is going to look like in the ideal world. You know, here's an ideal world showing how the product looks with this company's brands, with other products, if this is what a produce aisle actually looked like. Sorry, I'm going to jump back to the beginning and put my lawyer hat on and do the disclaimer. Some of the work that you're seeing is work that we have produced at Moxxy. Some of it is just work that we're showing that we think is good design and good examples and representation of good design. This is not all our work. The slide happens to be, but it's not all our work. So that's ideal world. But then going back to the earlier slides that I showed of the produce aisle and what it's going to look like, can do mock-ups that shows the product designed in the real world. This is not our design. I believe it was just a concept that was never produced, but I absolutely love it. Yeah. And if you were walking down that pasta aisle, would that product stand out to you? And if you saw that on a screen with a black outline and a white background, would it have the same impact when you're trying to evaluate the design that does?
So some additional examples of interesting standout design. And so what this example does, well, as did the previous pasta example, is make really nice use of white space. And so during those times where you're just compelled to put more and more nutritional claims or bilingual, or you feel like the competitors are doing it and maybe you need to add a little bit more messaging to your bag, sometimes just going the opposite way and keeping it really simple can have so much more of an impact than throwing vitamin C and steam in bag and all of those things. If you keep it really simple, it can be a really impactful design.
And if you notice this one, the white space is actually black space, which on the salad aisle really stands out because it differentiates from the other bags that are stacked next to it.
Right. So here's two different examples of Yusugi branding across two different products that we've designed for them. Just got a few examples here of interesting branding and the way the SKU colors are different and yet very, very consistent from product to product. Go ahead.
On this particular line of soup, if you think of the typical soup aisle, I mean, what are the two top brands of soup? Red Campbell's, Blue Progresso. These rainbow colors really stand out there.
And we realize that we're showing a lot of examples from outside the produce department. Inspiration can be found outside the produce department, inside the produce department, outside the grocery store entirely for design. And how we apply it as designers to the produce department is considering all those constraints that we've already talked about: cold, wet, foggy, regulation.
And now that you talked about outside of the produce aisle.
Right, so branding inside the produce aisle across several different types of packages, tags, clamshells, consistency, to help the consumer identify the brand. The polka dots here and the logo are tried to be applied even on the tiniest of tags.
So now switching over to some of those elements and goals of design. One of them is certainly to emphasize quality. We talked a little bit about that earlier, but strawberries are a great example in clear clamshells where you want to have as much of the product showing through as possible. This one, if you notice citrus, especially oranges, but not exclusively, I mean, for years they've been enhancing quality. The orange or red mesh bags with an orange product inside of it, you can clearly see the oranges that are through there, but your eyes see more orange color than might actually be present because of the orange or red mesh on the bag. Hiding the less desirable features, again, the butts, cut ends, juice, etc., with smart design on that. Hiding less desirable features, this is similar to this example here. Yeah, a lot of the granola on the shelf is in boxes that are printed where you don't see the actual product. They went to Bare Naked as well as Vicky's to a window to show the crisp, fresh granola that's inside, but they all have solid color at the bottom so that the little crumbs and pieces are not what you focus on. You focus on the big chunks that are standing up above.
You also don't notice all the air up here when the product has settled all the way on the bottom. So all the air is hidden.
I'm not sure whether this is me or you, but I think this is me. This is our dry run. So welcome to the audition.
Welcome to the practice session.
Again, in terms of the elements of design and what goes into it, a lot of features and benefits need to get added to the package. In this area, most of them are optional, not required, but if you're looking to do a certification, then it is required, and they have their own requirements in terms of color and location and size. So, you know, if you're going with CCOF or certified organic, non-GMO certification, you need to meet their requirements on top of the nutritional labeling requirements on top of everything else. But this is a big, important piece of the sales messaging.
Could be.
Could be. And personally, I would say appropriately. Everybody's got their soapbox, and mine is gluten-free oats, which is just an extension of putting a marketing fad term on something that has never had it. And if you blast that across as the big headline on your packaging, there may be some people who respond to that because they don't know any better, and there's other people who respond negatively to it at the same time.
Right.
Oops, did I go the wrong way? Adding instructions again, cooking instructions, usage instructions can oftentimes, I mean, at that point, somebody's picked up your package, they've turned it over, they're trying to figure out how they would use it and what they would do with it. But some of those elements that go into it, serving suggestions, and we chose these for a few different reasons. On the left, those two on the left are serving suggestions by images. You've got vegan cheese in a tube. I suppose you could show what that product looks like, but it's a little more effective to show it on a macaroni and cheese on a fork. Down below, you show the spices actually used in plated dishes to, again, give cooks idea. It's not just the raw ingredients, you know, a pile of red-brown powder. It's showing how you could use it. Some, you know, in the middle, you've got some serving suggestions in text format. And in putting this presentation together, I just came across this last, that's not a package, it's an ad. But I loved it so much, I added it to the presentation. 1918. In 1918, Sunkist was informing people how to use oranges. And oranges were both a salad and a dessert. And it goes all through serving suggestions. So something that we think, I had one for breakfast. You wouldn't think twice of what to do with an orange. 100 years ago, Sunkist needed to provide instructions on how to eat an orange. You get this one.
Okay. I don't remember being up for this one, and we've covered a lot of it to begin with, but the nutrition facts and panels, as we've discussed, are changing. We deal with these nutrition panels quite a bit at Moxxy and have outsourced nutritionists who help us perform the analysis, and man, they are ever changing. So it's an area that probably can't be emphasized enough to pay attention to detail, and probably one of the most important things we could say here is have a strong, solid proofreader on your team as well as whoever is doing your design, because it's easy to overlook a small detail that can really get you in a lot of hot water, either through a recall or a massive reprint. And so it's an area we pay a lot of attention to, and tag team with our client to make sure that there's a solid proofing process in place so that it goes through without a hitch.
And proofing is not just spelling, content, words. Proofing, especially for nutritional information, probably more so than anything else, is the requirements. This isn't up here so that you can learn all the details. That's available online from the USDA. It's up here to show you all the details that are needed to be known. And a lot of those are dealing specifically with the type, style, and the size that information needs to be presented. So even if you proof it correctly, if the regulation says it needs to be 8-point type, and it's
It was 8-point type when it started, but as you got through design, it was a little too big, so they reduced it, and it's now 7.25 point type if you were to measure it. Those are also some of the exacting standards and proofreading needs to take a look at.
And things that designers need to know so that when they're designing a package and laying out the nutrition panel, they're not screwing it up.
This goes to the strategy, and as Karen was talking at the beginning, sometimes your strategy is to fit in with everybody else and be familiar to the consumer, and sometimes it's to stand out. So the black lettuce bags from Leaf stand out really nicely. For the most part, there are some exceptions, but if you walk down the dairy aisle and see a pink bottle of milk, what is it? Low fat, no fat. Doesn't matter which brand it is, what shape it is, whether it's glass, whether it's a carton. The consumer is habituated to knowing that that's non-fat milk, and that blue is low-fat milk and red is whole milk, regardless of the manufacturer, the dairy, the producer that it's coming from. So all of that goes into the strategy of what are we going to produce. Have fun.
Right, and then what does it need to produce on? And so CMYK is a print process, RGB is on-screen digital, red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. And then for print, there's also the screen printing and cartons. And so all of these different color spaces, the colors are never exact. So if you've got a film bag that's going inside a printed box, and then you've got tags and you want all of that to be consistent, getting those colors to match up on the design side can be sometimes nearly impossible. So,
and it's technically impossible.
Technically impossible.
I mean, these are two of 6 color books that are used for lithographic printing. This is the flexographic printing color book. They all have color conversion formulas, but they're conversions. They're not exact. Lithographic gets you great clear printing. This is a laminated carton that the sheet was printed lithographically and then laminated onto the corrugated cardboard, as was this one here. But again, when you're trying to match colors and processes and substrates, and for produce it works. If we were talking to nail polish or lipstick manufacturers, it'd be a much bigger challenge. When you have 42 shades of pink and you're trying to reflect that on your package, you can't have variances because of the substrate or the type of ink being used.
Right. So, but it's the color consistency is something that we pay a lot of attention to. And sometimes when you're on a press check, so you've got your design is set, your colors have all been approved, and then you're on press to see your film or your box being produced, and something is coming out not quite as it was showing up on your color book. Maybe your color book has been sitting around for a year and it's faded a little bit, or something on press isn't going just quite right, and so you're adjusting on press to make your blue a little bit bluer or a little bit greener, and then that makes, if you've got a serving suggestion, maybe that making your lettuce in the salad look a little bit pukey. And so any adjustment that you make on press might have unintended consequences, and so your adjustment factor may be limited. And Thomas, feel free to jump in anytime, because we've been on press with you when you've been helping us solve some of these problems, and they're all kind of normal problems. Even if you've got the best design, there might need to be some shifting on press due to conditions on that particular day, which can sometimes make for a very long day on press. But it's all part of the quality control process that is part of the normal process.
Well, that's where the design is really important, because if a lot of design firms that don't know what they're doing, they'll give you a package and it's got 50 colors on it. It's all made out of process. Well, the problem with that is you change one element at that bag, it changes everything else that's tied to the process. So that's why we try to make images process and then everything else line code. But a lot of design firms don't know that, and then we'll get a file And we have to go back and forth a bunch of times saying, no, you want to make this a line color, you don't want this out of process. And so the design firm's really important, or the file that you get to work with is really important to begin with, so that we can meet the expectations to begin with.
Thank you.
And adding fuel to this fire, you're viewing typically first on your monitor. Once you get, maybe you're coming in and getting a presentation, but let's assume you're viewing it on your monitor, which may be calibrated different than the designer's monitor. And maybe you print it out on your laser printer, which is one of those HP 6-color, they've got their own inks that don't match anybody else's inks. So when you print it out, it looks a little bit, and a couple of the designers in the room are smiling, it looks a little bit different than it does on our laser printer.
And if you're looking at a PDF design on your iPad or your iPhone, it is not going to be accurate. Just if you're looking at a JPEG, at least there will be JPEG consistency from device to device in most cases, but it's still not accurate. So some of our clients are really busy, especially our sales guys or our farmers who are, out on the ranch or out in the field visiting customers, and they're trying to approve designs on their iPhone or their iPad, and it's just a really bad idea. We try to make sure that a printed proof with a color swatch is presented and that we can have that conversation again. This is a PMS color, or this is CMYK conversion, but remember, this is going to film, and so here's how it might look. Some cases we'll do an ink drawdown or get a physical proof from the manufacturer before we go through the full run to avoid color inconsistency and negative surprises.
And some examples of different production techniques and how it reproduces and how you can actually get pretty close. I mean, it is a challenge, but you can get pretty close. So this is a different bell pepper box. This is craft corrugated with white printed underneath it, but it's not waxed, on top of the laminated box, so you can see that's pretty close. Here we have a film bag, which is flexo printed on top of a lithographic printed box. Entirely different materials, different substrates, different inks, different reflexivity, I can say that, but still you can tell it's the same brand. Here are those examples from Leaf. They use a different type of film bag. That is a white corrugated product, and it looks pretty close, and I would argue, and this is, we came across this and loved the work. It's not ours. I wish it was. But here too, Karen talked about the white space when she talked about that big black area that wasn't filled with a lot of copy. They differentiated their black with the white so that they're not trying to match black on black and get some good contrast to it. You were going to talk prep. We talked a little bit about it.
This is a typical die line that we would have to work with, and so showing this to a client and having them make sense of what it actually looks like can sometimes be nearly impossible, but this is what our designers are working with. And we'll take it from this stage and turn it into a model so that we can see how the photos line up, because when you have a corner, you want it to look like that. And it's really easy for it to not be consistent around the corner when you're designing like this. So it's something that we pay attention to. Yes?
Are the designers using 3D modeling? I'm used to seeing this, two-dimensional, but graphically, are they getting into that, into more of a CAD style?
Great question. I don't know how our designers create the 3D models.
But if you'll bear with my screen jumping here, I gotta go. Yeah, I know.
That's a rendering that our designers
both of
put
these
together.
Are digital renderings.
Yeah, they're digital renderings. They're not photographs. So they've been turned into dimensional looking.
Who's doing that? What program?
I'm sorry, I can find out for you, but we're doing it. I just don't know what program they're using.
We outsource how 3D renderings.
Yeah, there's certain apps you can have, and you just drop your art in it, and so you can show it to the retailer, and it turns it all around. But we've been having 50 degree.
Yeah, that would be a great product.
There's
But it's all digital. Thank you.
Before I get to the next slide, we're switching gears and going in a different direction again. I want to make a political statement that this is non-political. We don't care who you believe first came out with bagged salad. But it was an innovation, and this is an early form of bagged salad. You can't quote me as saying who did what, when, where, how. I'm not going to get into that. But here was an innovation, bagged salad. I mean, this was in the late 80s. Prior to that, the only way to buy lettuce was to buy a head of lettuce. In most grocery stores, you can't buy a head of lettuce today. So that was a packaging innovation that changed the industry. Here's a more recent one. Steamed in the bag. Developed because materials are being developed that allow it to happen. You don't even have to take it out, wash it in the colander, put it in a bowl. Just throw the bag in the microwave and the perforations are big enough that it cooks in the bag. Another product packaging innovation, taking leafy greens, combining them with proteins and other products, putting them in a bowl, packaging completely, innovating and reshaping the market. Couple additional ones to show. We're waiting for an opportunity to use both of these. These are material innovations. Sambrilo has these new clamshell replacement, recyclable, it's called ReadyCycle. Neat little boxes. They don't have as much clear space as the clamshell. Very interesting product. Started earlier with the problems of a wet field pack in a wax box. Not only does that present problems for designers, they're non-recyclable. So those wax cartons create a multitude of problems, especially as consumers are more interested in sustainability and recyclability, even if it's a bulk pack going to food service or to grocery. There are plastic replacements, recyclable plastic replacements for corrugated cardboard. This is Ecor out of Seattle Box is what they're called. SEACA. It's Seattle Tacoma Box Company. They've got a plant in the Central Valley that produces these. Not only is it recyclable, not only is it waterproof, it is a clean, white, solid substrate for marketers and designers to deliver your messages on. You can, yes, we're excited about that. Compared to, look what you've got on the end, on the bottom over there. So we're waiting for the opportunity to be able to use something like this. We think there's some great opportunities with that. Now, supposedly they're competitive, but I don't know at what volumes. That's what they claim. But yeah, I'm not sure where they're sourcing the raw materials, and I know they're not the only ones. They're ones that we ran into first at PMA, and we know they're in this general area. But you know, it's to us a very interesting, exciting product because what we can do with it on our side, let alone the sustainability issues and the problems with the wax corrugated product. Okay. That is the bulk of our presentation, but half of our slides are left, almost half. So we're going to show a bunch of designs and that we labeled as inspirations that we found that we think stand out for a variety of reasons. The first one, though, has nothing to do with food and nothing to do with produce, but it's showing from another industry how important packaging can be. In the fragrance industry, packaging is everything. You know, they may spend 50 cents on horse urine and ground up flowers and $10 on a bottle, and sell it for $100 a half ounce and call it fancy perfume. So I realize what I'm about to show you. Bear with me here. I know the brand stands for something else, but bear with me here. You think of most farmers, diesel is what fuels their tractors. It's what they try and wash off the first thing they walk through the door. It's not what you put into a fancy package and sell for over, if I did the math right, over $2,000 a gallon, where you can go right down the street and get it for $3 1/4. But that's what packaging has enabled them to do. And yes, that's not diesel fuel, but just trying to illustrate the point here. But think about what you can do with premium packaging and how it can fit food and produce. To me, this is taking fragrance packaging and bringing it into the food aisle. You know, how much would a consumer pay for a plastic bear-shaped squeeze bottle of honey versus this? It's the same bees, the same honey.
Depends on the consumer.
Depends on the consumer. But it all doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, you can make nice packaging design just on 2-color printing, on craft corrugated, and still have it be clean and crisp and stand out and do its job. Or you can have fun on clamshells. Little bit of a different approach here to their branding and their logo. Also a little bit of a different approach, creating, you know, an heirloom orange, but putting a premium look to the packaging on it. If you go to Sun Pacific's website, all they show is the carton with the stacked bags. I believe that was Safeway that took it and made it an end cap in the produce aisle and hung them up to give them even greater visibility. Not sure if that needs any comments other than that it's been a very effective design. Product combinations in creative packaging sits in the aisle. That's going to stand out. The name alone gives people an idea what to do with it. Talk about serving suggestions. Craft corrugated print. This was a National Packaging Design Award winner where there is color. There was white printed underneath it. But again, it doesn't have to be. This is more expensive than a 2-color print run, but it doesn't have to be laminated, high color, lithographic, high cost to get a quality, high look. Okay, you walk into 7-Eleven or whatever convenience store and you want a sandwich. Is that going to attract your attention on the right there more than the cello wrap sandwich that you might run into today? And what about a 69-cent bag of beans versus the same beans packed in something like this? In a sea of yellow and red bags on the chip shelf, is that going to stand out? Or this one that I found locally? The convenient way to double the sale of cantaloupes. How many cantaloupes do most people buy when they walk in the produce aisle? One at a time. Just doubled your sales here. Some brand extension across multiple SKUs that again stands out. I'm not sure whether Palm has a patent, a trademark, or a copyright on their bottle. They may have all three. But if you saw that bottle empty, is there anybody in here who would not know what that bottle was? Pretty effective branding through their packaging. A different approach to clamshell labels when you're trying to get the product to show through. Here's a label on a white substrate. Here's a label on a clear substrate. I would argue that it definitely upgrades the impression and the look and certainly makes you show off more of the product that's underneath. Think of your typical meat counter meat package with the butcher label on it. When I showed this slide to one of our designers, didn't even realize that the one on the lower left is a vegan product. These are some PMA award winners. I believe these were last year. These two are some PMA award winners, and the hot shots are we find it very interesting. It's a clamshell in a cardboard box. Okay, so for those on a sustainability standpoint, maybe not the most sustainable way you can go. But look at all that space they found to present their messages and serving suggestions and their information. I mean, they could never fit that on a clamshell. Ocean Mist had a couple of PMA winners last year as well. And we are down to thank you and questions.
Have you seen many clamshells in bags yet?
Can't say that I have. Have you?
It's being talked about, but I haven't seen it. I don't know if that's, something being introduced into the industry, or I just don't know.
Great question. Something to look for. Hi.
So the corrugated box that you said was high graphics, that was just the craft filler. What printing process was that?
That's regular flexo printing. But the way they did it,
Are you talking about the Yusugi box?
no, the Sun Pacific one.
Oh, okay.
Had it in one of the pictures, but what they did was on a regular craft box where the color was, they printed white first and then the color on top of it. It doesn't make it as bright white as this clay-coated laminated paper, but it still does a good job of hiding the brown craft paper from underneath and helps it come through stronger.
I'm always concerned about registration. They always say you have to, when you design, to leave room for your registration and tracking and all that stuff.
Is that the one we're talking about?
That's the one you were talking about, right? Yeah. I mean, they were able to pull it off. That again was a packaging award that we threw in. It's not our work. Didn't do the production on it, but compared to the normal corrugated craft box, it really does stand out and was a good job.
Yeah, I think it depends on the corrugated box company, their plant's capabilities, and the equipment they have. A lot of these plants now, box plants, have new technology in die cutting and printing that gives you a lot better registration than they used to have. So it all depends on the plant.
Yeah, and it also depends on the grade of the cardboard they're using. I mean, if you, how many people have a second life assembling IKEA furniture besides me? The IKEA cardboard they use is a very low grade. The surface is rippled. It's very absorbent. I don't think you could print anything on it. I'm sure that box is a much higher grade cardboard that makes it easier to run. What else?
Sort of similar. You're talking about that went through 2 passes then? It went through the printer twice?
No, I would guess it went through the press once. Okay. So it went through probably a 6-tower press. So they maybe even more than that, but the white was definitely one color. I think the green was probably a spot color. Possibly the red on the logo, and everything else was 4-color process.
And I was going to ask about the bags, if those can pass through more than once, or if when you have 12 colors, can you do more than one hit of a color?
Well, you have 10 stations to work. On a 10-color press, you have 10 decks. and that's all you have. You can't run it
Can't
back
do
through
one.
and get registration again.
But could you get it doubled?
Yeah, you can do two bumps of white.
You can do 2
Yeah,
bumps of
because I
white.
think you had
yes.
one that was 3 or
You can get
something.
2 bumps of white, which will give you more opacity. But really, the benefit of 2 bumps of white, it doesn't double the opacity. So when you do, say, a double bump of white, you know, it has a number, say 60 opacity. If you double bump it, you might get a 65. You know, it doesn't. There's no benefit. Sometimes customers want a double bump of white, you know, because they demand it. But if you look at the numbers, you know, sometimes visually it might give you a little bit of a bump, but the cost-wise and what you actually gain from it, it's usually not a benefit to double bump.
Well, and there's
of
special
white.
inks for like more opaque white than others, so you can request that too, right?
Yeah, well, you can get a strong white by the analogs used, how much ink you put down, and all those things. There's ways to get that opacity up really high, but there's only so far you can go on a Flexo.
And you can go further on a clear film substrate than you can on a craft corrugated substrate because you've got the brown showing through. Any other burning questions?
You guys have been great. Thank you for all of your questions and coming out today.